Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to follow Darcey on 90 Day Fiancé. Let's see what happens on this TV show. We're about midway through season 4. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I am a licensed therapist and a professor. And when I watch these shows, I often have things to say. And so let's see if that is true with this episode.
It's been weeks of me being totally confused on where I stand, especially after I saw photos of him with another woman.
I didn't sleep last night. I've been quite anxious. I would explain it as being scared.
I have feelings for her, romantically, but we have issues and problems we need to work out.
I hope she can attack the problems rather than the person. But in saying that, I'm no angel myself, so I hope I can keep it together too.
So good for Tom to be able to admit that he has a problem as well. That is fantastic. Something we didn't see Jesse do a lot of. And he's also talking about his nervousness and his fear, which lends itself to the hypothesis I was talking about earlier, that he has some kind of traumas about disappointing people, some kind of deep shame and worthlessness around being a bad boy. And just a speculation, I can't know that without talking to him.
Do you mind holding my bags? Perfect, thank you.
You can just come right this way, straight ahead.
Wonderful, thank you. Hello, Thomas. Good to see you. No, that's okay. I don't feel comfortable.
You don't feel
Thank
comfortable?
you. Yeah.
Okay.
Handshake's fine.
So I know some of you actually know that I've seen this episode before because this was the first episode of 90 Day Fiancé that I actually ever watched, and I posted it because I didn't know anyone would care about me watching the whole show. And I just thought maybe, a couple people would be interested in my reaction anyway. People were like, you got to go back to the beginning. So I've gone all the way back to the beginning, and I finally caught my way all the way up to this episode. So I know how this plays out, or at least I think I remember. And I think I remember the first time I saw this, I had no knowledge of who Darcey was or who Tom was. Obviously, the show talked, there's a lot of Darcey going back to season 1 of this show. And so now, I don't know what number this is, 25, 30 or something of me doing episodes on Darcey. And I have a lot more background. And so when I see her doing what she just did, it feels different from me from the first time I saw it. He's reaching out to kiss her and she's like, no, which, makes sense given that he's giving a lot of vibes that he's there to break up with her.
How's it going?
I'm good.
Good.
It's a little bit nervous about seeing you, but
No need. It's just me.
So this is a little weird in that the ball is basically in Tom's court. I think both of these people know that Darcey wants to be with Tom, and Tom has had a lot of confusion or ambivalence or whatever he's going through regarding his feelings about Darcey. So it would stand to reason that Tom would be the one to lead the conversation and say, okay, here's what's up, or here's what I'd like to get out of today, or here's how I feel, or asking questions or whatever. But instead, he's just, being standoffish. Now, from Darcey's perspective, and from anyone watching this, it might look like Tom is stuck up or controlling, what we might hear that word, or gaslighting. But my hypothesis is that he does have a heart, as most people do. And why would he do what he's doing, which is to be very withholding, very quiet, very mysterious, purposely withholding? Why would he do that? Well, the only conceptualization I can think of course, I don't know because I haven't had a chance to talk with them, and the show only shows us little bits and pieces, and they know they're being filmed, so they might not be acting like they would in real life. But a speculation based on what we're seeing is that he's terrified of disappointing people. He has potentially deep shame around hurting other people's feelings, and there's probably a pretty big part of him that knows that he's going to have to hurt her feelings, and she's going to be very sad. And instead of seeing the forest through the trees and seeing like, well, I'm going to hurt her feelings, and so let's get this over with, he instead is avoiding hurting her feelings. But by doing that, he hurts her feelings even more because of the withholding nature and also where this conversation ends up. So let's continue watching.
Where did you fly in from?
Flying from Canada,
Oh,
Toronto.
that's nice.
How was Malta?
Great. It was nice to spend it with Stace. Beautiful memory to have for our 45th birthday. Thank you for the happy birthday text.
Wasn't a lot, was it really?
You did say that you were going to video call or call, but I waited that whole day. It's okay.
So the other conceptualization that I might want to test out if he were a client would be he has some past relationship where he was made to feel worthless, or he was made to feel, or he saw someone being made to feel worthless, and he internalized that dyad and is now recreating it by making her feel like the way he feels. Maybe it's, given his demeanor, maybe he was made to feel invisible or made to feel irrelevant or made to feel passed over or rejected or not really, people weren't really interested in how he was feeling or something along those lines. Those would just be hypotheses that I would investigate. And he, due to this internalization being made difficult through projective identification to rid himself, the fantasy is ridding yourself of this internalization. You externalize part of it and you identify with part of it. And he's identifying with whomever made him feel this way. And he's making Darcey feel the way he felt when he was a child. And of course, this matches up with Darcey's interject as well, speculation, in which she was made to feel worthless and someone was making her feel worthless, either through abandonment or criticism or something. So again, if we just look at his behavior, we would be like, what a stuck-up D-bag. But as a clinician who treats people like this, I have to go deeper than that. And so those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. What defense was helpful to him in the past that is being exhibited here, that's shooting himself in the foot and harming other people?
I wanted to come and see you.
Oh, that's nice.
I did want to come and see you.
You did want, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the offer was always on the table, but I guess it never really fit into your schedule, so.
So as I talked about in a previous episode, it's possible that because of his avoidant nature and because of this trauma around being disappointing and shame around hurting other people's feelings, he sits down and his first, at least overt things that he's saying are nice things. I did want to come to see you. He tries to kiss her, he's trying to be casual with her, but subconsciously what he might be trying to do is provoke her into having an emotional explosion so that he can blame the breakup on her and not on himself. And then he can walk away saying, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not a bad boy. She was the crazy person, and I walked away from a crazy person. And that the subconscious is trying to do that trying to protect him from the notion that he is a bad boy, because a lot of things are pointing in the direction of he just wants to break up with her. And why isn't he just saying that? A lot of things are pointing in the direction that he's dating someone else. Why doesn't he just say, I'm sorry, I found someone else, I want to break up? Why isn't he saying that? Why is he doing these little things to raise the risk of Darcey having some kind of emotional explosion that is highly predictable? We have to wonder.
My schedule is here, and I'm here now. And
Well, thank you for making it a lunch meeting and fitting me into your schedule.
oh, coffee.
Yeah, coffee meeting.
That's cool.
Yeah, so.
The other conceptualization, again, I don't know, mostly because we're obviously not given enough information to assess someone's personality, and also because avoidant people who exhibit behavior like Tom, they're harder to read. You have to actually get more of their subjective experience by eliciting that through interviews and assessments and clinical treatment. But another hypothesis that I would investigate is mild narcissistic personality spectrum. And he doesn't, because of the worthlessness and emptiness and lack of self, he has a veil of narcissism that covers that. If he was on the spectrum, I would say it was mild, but maybe a little bit. There's some red flags of that, in terms of the way that he talks and the way that he might present himself. If I was to speculate that Jesse was on the spectrum, which of course I can't know because I haven't assessed him, but given what the show is showing us, I would hypothesize and need to test out that Jesse was higher on the spectrum than Tom. But Tom might be a little bit on the spectrum as well. And avoidant people tend to gravitate towards narcissistic defenses because when you avoid due to neglect and mistreatment growing up, which I don't know if Tom went through, then you have to protect yourself. And one of the ways that some children will protect themselves is they will say, other people are bad, I'm good, and I can't depend on other people. I have to depend on the self. And if I'm going to depend on the self, I have to believe that I am capable of anything because I have a lot of anxiety about the world and no one else is going to help me. So I have to become delusional about how good I am in the world and how worthy of love I am in the world because I'm not getting it from other people and I need to fully depend on the self. And so when people do that, they might exhibit behavior because they know they're being filmed. That might also drive people to be on a reality TV show. It might also drive someone to have a podcast, by the way. And once they're on the reality TV show and they're being recorded, they might always have one eyeball on how is the audience going to receive me because I want a lot of positive accolades. So how can I have an interaction here where the audience of this TV show is going to like me and shower me with lots of attention? We could speculate or have a hypothesis about Jesse in that situation as well. Anyway, so let's continue watching.
What actually happened to us?
I don't know, it just seems like you shut down when you leave. After we always say we're going to give it another go, and then you leave, it's like I'm left kind of just wondering.
So that's probably a pretty good assessment based on the little bit of detail that we are given on the show, is that when they're together, they feel very close, and when they are long-distance relationship, then the feeling goes away from him. It's not uncommon for that to happen. It is sometimes hard for people to retain the connection when they are in long-distance relationships. And it seems like Darcey has an easier time with that than Tom does, maybe. And again, I want to point out that Tom is asking her. He's putting the ball in her court rather than him leading the show and trying to explain to Darcey what's going on for him. He's waiting for her to step in. That's another avoidant thing that people will do, is they don't want to extend themselves because their traumas are such that when they extended themselves, they were harmed in some way. And so it's better to, when you're in a stressful situation, to just be very quiet and almost kind of freeze. It's a fight, flight, freeze, appease, and the avoidant people tend to either flight or freeze. And essentially, the body thinks if I just remain perfectly still, I can be safe. And maybe that's what's happening too. It's hard to know.
I don't ever want to hurt you. That was never my intention.
So that's great. It's a good opener to a breakup to say, I never wanted to hurt you. It's nice, it's loving, it's caring. This is starting off well.
And you were this lovely, wonderful woman. You have a certain set of things that you want. And I have a certain thing. I want to know that the person, when I need them, are there for me. And you're not always there for me.
Really,
Sometimes
how have I not been?
Because I'll ring and talk to you, and it's like, I actually need something of you. And I'll sit and I'll speak to you, and you're so preoccupied with talking about something that's happened to you.
That's not true.
But it is.
That's not true.
It is. Maybe
I feel
you
like
just
that's the
don't
way with
see it.
you.
Okay, so this is interesting. The first time I saw this episode weeks ago, I had no background for what Tom was talking about. But now that I've seen the little bit of data that the show is giving us, I have more background on that. And I could absolutely see that happening. Although Darcey obviously cares and is nice and probably has a lot of intention of being there for Tom, I could absolutely see a scenario where Darcey, given her traumas, given her developmental arrestation that she might have, that it's really hard for her to pay attention to other people's feelings. Not that she doesn't care, not that she doesn't have empathy, because she does, but that because of the traumas she went through, there's so many distractions emotionally for her that are happening frequently that it's hard for her to push that aside and really pay attention to someone the way Tom wants. Now, the other thing I would say is, as a system, it takes two to tango. My suspicion is that Tom plays an equal role in this, in that given what we've heard from his friends and family, that he is avoidant and he's not very expressive, probably due to traumas that he's been through childhood and as an adult, that when he did bid for attention, when he did give signals that he needed her to empathize with him and take care of him, he barely did it, or he didn't do it at all and he thought he did it. So you have this combination of Tom, who very quietly or very, in a very confusing way, bids Darcey like, hey, I'm going through something difficult. Can you take care of me? And then Darcey, given that she has a lower differentiation and is probably having a lot of trauma feelings on a minute-by-minute basis and worries and, always trying to look good because I'm guessing, speculation, she had traumas in her past that led her to believe that the only way she could get people to love her is if she always looked perfect. And so maybe she was distracted by that, or she was distracted by the fact that, in my perception, it doesn't seem like Darcey has anyone except for her kids. That's another thing. Maybe she was distracted by parenting her kids, which would make sense. And it's long distance, and they're in different time zones. I could absolutely see a situation where Tom legitimately felt neglected emotionally. Now, I could also see someone in Tom's position bidding for attention in a tiny way, Darcey not really noticing it, and then Tom quickly pulling back and saying, I can't depend on her, and then feeling really devastated. Avoidantly attached people tend to do that. They will bid kind of, and then it won't go well, and then they'll pull back. Another thing that avoidant people will do, and I think this is probably a really good hypothesis for Tom, is that they tend to generally come across like they're very strong, like they're very independent, like they don't need anyone. They come across as the opposite of needy, which is pathologically independent. Deep down, they are extremely needy, but they're so afraid of exhibiting that and being rejected, that he gives off such a vibe of that on a general basis that Darcey basically has turned off noticing when he needs anything, because she just assumes that he doesn't need anything because he never indicates that. And so the little times when he does indicate, she doesn't notice it because she's not used to him even doing that, because she's like, well, I'm sure he's got it. These are all speculations, but this is just food for thought. But it is interesting that this is what Tom is saying, is like, the reason why I'm going to break up with you, which I'm guessing is where this is headed. Well, I forget how this conversation exactly plays out. I just know that I just remember that it plays out in them fighting with each other. But as he's leading up to that, which sounds like he is, he's saying, there were times when I felt like you weren't really paying attention to me. And then she says, yes, I was. And this is kind of Darcey's defense too. She has a hard time listening to people and comes back with defensiveness. Like when, when Tom said, hey, you were getting a little touchy-feely with that person in the lobby. No, I wasn't. When Jesse said, I found that thing on the internet that you went to jail because you got into a violent interaction with your sister. No, I wasn't. It's this automatic reaction. Because when you're traumatized when you're young, you tend to have certain developmental arrest, and you can operate, generally speaking, from a younger age, and younger people tend to do that, right? They're like, no, I didn't. No, that wasn't me. That, because they're so terrified of being in trouble. Also, it's possible, speculation, that Darcey was overly punished or made to feel bad through abandonment or something, that unless she was a good girl and she made sure that she was always a good girl, she would be abandoned or abused or something. And so that'll be another knee-jerk reaction that people have. We all kind of have that knee-jerk reaction. No, it wasn't me. But people who have been through worse treatment and have a lot of incentive to have that knee-jerk reaction more readily will tend to do that more, and they'll stick with it. Like for me, I'll get defensive at first, but then I'll say, well, wait, what are they saying? Well, okay, maybe there's some merit to that. Whereas people with Darcey's issues might just perpetuate, and then that's the end of the story.
Why do you never let me talk?
Go ahead, talk.
You never let me talk.
Because I don't believe half the stuff you're saying.
You see yourself as something other than what you really are, so let me talk.
Okay.
You haven't even listened to where I'm getting to make an understanding of what I'm actually trying to say.
So I don't know if they're editing it and they've taken out certain bits. It doesn't seem like it. But this is another thing that I've been talking about with avoidant people is they will think they have said something when they haven't said it. The thought of saying it will rattle around in their brain, and their brain will process it as if they said it, but they did not say it. And so they'll often say things like that, like, you're not listening to me. And even though it seems like Darcey is listening, she got defensive, but it's understandable under the circumstances. It's interesting how much more is coming to the fore when I've watched all the way from the beginning of season 1. I remember the first time I watched this scene, I really had no idea why these two people were fighting or where these behaviors were coming from.
You have not.
Okay. I think you're trying to cover up something. I mean, isn't there something you have to tell me?
So this is another classic avoidant thing. It's I want to say that it's not just avoidant. There's also all sorts of other personality spectra that I could be talking about that I don't want to get bogged down in and get too technical. But just know that this is another common personality trait. This is another common evocation that will happen to other people. Is that the right way to say it? It's common for people to react this way to avoidant people of like, were you going to say something? Trying to pull teeth. There's certain kinds of personalities where you feel like you're always trying to, will you please just share with me what the hell is going on in your head? Just, and I would have the same reaction to them. Like, just say it. What's on your mind? Like you're beating around the bush. Why is it up to me to pry the words out of you? Now, again, it's probably speculation, hypothesis that I would have to test, that Tom, due to the traumas and mistreatment that he experienced as a child, developed a defense of, when in doubt, don't say anything. When in doubt, don't express. When in doubt, stay out of trouble. That would be my guess.
I cannot believe Tom still hasn't told me about this other woman. He should man up and tell me the situation. Don't string me along anymore. I didn't come for him to give me some mumbo-jumbo BS. You could tell me. It's okay.
What do you want to hear?
So, again, it's like prying teeth out of somebody. What do you want to hear? I don't know. Why you came here to talk?
Tom, I know about your new girl.
Yeah. Well, the person you're talking about is from 3 weeks ago.
So you wanted to say it to my face, where I already knew.
Again, maybe they're editing this to make Tom look bad. We'll never know, maybe. But if this is what really happened, it's such a weird response, right? She's like, this woman. Tom's saying, wow, what you're talking about is a woman from 3 weeks ago. Okay, so what's going on? Like, again, speculation. Tom is more terrified of being a bad boy, being disappointing other people, being hurtful to other people. He's more terrified of that than the consequences that come with not saying anything. And there's a possibility he's trying to provoke her to having explosions so that he can blame the breakup on her instead of himself.
While Darcey and I have been spending time apart, I've actually met someone. She's called Shannon. 3 weeks ago, I was in Milan for Fashion Week, as was she. We then shared a drink, we shared the evening together, and I haven't told Darcey that I've met someone else because I feel confused about a few things.
Okay, it's okay to be confused. It's okay to meet another person. It's okay to break up with someone. It is destructive to not say anything. It's destructive to string someone along without telling them as soon as possible and then putting pictures on the internet. Why would someone do that? Speculation. He has a heart and he doesn't want to hurt her. When he said he didn't want to hurt her, that was from the heart. It seemed like it was from his heart. But why? So why would he do this? Why would he do something that is so obviously going to hurt her? So the speculation is that he's a leaf in the wind. I've talked about this before. Some people, because of the way they were treated when they were small, they either lack differentiation or they learned that they couldn't really assert themselves. And so they just drift where people influence them. And although he seems like a very put together person, a mature person, he's not really exhibiting behavior around that. So he might be the sort of person that's just like, well, this woman liked me and she was talking to me. And so I just kept talking to her. And when he was around Darcey, it's like, well, Darcey really loves me. And so I'm going to love her back and talk. She wants to talk about marriage. So eventually we'll talk about marriage. And then this other person did that. And my sister did that. And he seems to exhibit that pattern. There's no way to know because I would have to talk with Tom about his subjective experience. While we're on the topic, I can't diagnose from afar. I think that's pretty clear in my language. Also, subscribe, hit the bell below. From what I understand, that means that you'll get notifications when we post new stuff. You don't want to miss any episode. You don't have to watch every episode, but you don't want to miss the opportunity to watch every episode. Also, comment below what do you think about what I'm saying? What do you think about this episode? What do you think about Darcey and Tom? And become a patron on Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com, become a patron of our podcast, and that's how I know that you like what we're doing. All right, let's continue watching.
I met someone that loves me the way I wanted to be loved.
Okay. Good for you, Tom. I don't know if that's the sort of message that you need to be saying in this moment. I think I talked about maybe this the first time around when I watched this episode. So let me model for Tom and for everyone else out there a possible approach to this conversation. Tom sits down. Darcey, I'm really sorry for everything that I have done recently. I'm guessing that you might have seen a picture that I posted online. It was wrong of me to, one, post that picture, and two, to be dating other people without having been very clear to you where we stand. And that's my fault. I take full responsibility for that. I don't know why I did it. I think I was afraid of hurting your feelings, and it was just stupid of me to wait this long to tell you. So I'm here to tell you I'm really sorry, but I met someone else, and I didn't want to tell you over the phone, so I unfortunately had to wait a couple weeks to fly out to New York, and I wanted to tell you in person. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. And then she would cry or be angry or be upset or walk out of the room or whatever. And then you would say, you're right to be upset. You're right to be upset with me. I want you to know I did really care for you. I did really love you for a time. I think the long distance thing just made it really hard for me to hold on to that love. And, I'm just really sorry about that. I did really care about you. I'd like to be friends. I'd understand if you don't want to be. I know this is a lot to lay on you right now. Maybe we can talk about this later. How are you feeling? I'm really sorry. Okay. How many times, if you've ever been dumped or dumped someone, how many times have you done something in that arena, in that zone, where you take responsibility, you apologize, you take care of the other person, you don't fall on a sword, you don't say, and I'm a terrible person. You just take responsibility for your mistakes. You made a mistake. You fell out of love, That's just what happens. How many times have you been broken up with that way? How many times have you broken up with someone that way? I'm guessing not very often, maybe sometimes. The reason why in our society do we have so many people walking around breaking up with people in ways like this or other destructive ways? Why do we have that? Well, here are some reasons. We have no education on how to break up with someone. It sounds like a ridiculous thing to educate people on, right? It's not. It is how many, I bet you average people break up with people, whether divorce or, short-term relationships, 2-year-long relationships. People break up with people, I would say on average, 10 times in their life, maybe 40 times. I don't know how many times, many times in their life. It would be a wonderful skill to learn. And there's no good examples, hardly at all, in society, especially on reality TV. So you don't even have an example to follow. You might not have seen, you probably didn't see your parents or your older siblings or anyone in your community breaking up in a mature, caring way. So why would you know? But you might say, well, even if you did teach it and you did have modeling for it, it doesn't guarantee that someone would do it. Well, let me tell you this. How many people out there know how to get married? How many people out there know how to ask someone to marry you? I bet you know exactly how to propose. There's a protocol. You know exactly how to hold a wedding. There are protocols, and it's repeatedly taught to people through magazines and through TV shows and through modeling. You go to a wedding, you're like, oh, well, that's what a wedding looks like, so that's what I'm going to do. But we have almost no protocols and no culture and no education and no magazines about divorce and breaking up. And so everyone is just flailing this. Everyone is just flailing and failing. And a wake of destruction and attachment injury is just rolling through society on a minute-by-minute basis. So it makes sense that people do this, and it drives me crazy. There's a way to break up that makes people not hate you, that makes you feel like you did the right thing. And there's a way to break up that creates damage for everybody. So, anyway, I don't remember how I got on that topic, but I think it's because Tom said something that I deemed to be not functional.
I'm not okay with that. I totally felt like we were trying to figure out where we stand. But now that he admitted to being in love, or she can love the way he needs to be loved, it hurts to know the truth.
So as always, in the interview, when they're not in front of the other person, they often will have extremely functional emotional expression. Darcey, in the interview away from Tom, is saying that she's very sad and she's disappointed and she's really hurt. Yes, that is the central reality here. It hurts to be broken up with by someone that you really cared about and really had a vision of a future with. It hurts. And it would be wonderful if Darcey could stay there in that, self-care, self-compassion place in the midst of Tom's, squirrely conversation style, and just be like, wow, this really hurts. I can't lie. This is really hurting. But instead, when we're undifferentiated and we're challenged and we lose sight of where we're at, we transform, and we're very vulnerable, we transform that hurt into anger, which is a secondary emotion. Primary emotion, hurt and fear. Secondary emotion, anger. And so we transform it into anger. And that's when sometimes we can shoot ourselves in the foot. Let's see what happens.
You had everything of me in your hands, and you didn't see it.
Okay.
You were so preoccupied with other things.
So, like I said, there's nothing wrong with Tom being like, I felt a little neglected. I don't know if it was you. I don't know if it was me. But there were times I just want you to know that I felt a little neglected emotionally sometimes. I don't know. Maybe I'm needy. So that's taking responsibility. That's not accusatory. That's saying, maybe I'm the crazy one. I don't know. But instead, it's you had everything of me in your hands and you threw it away. This is your fault. So not only is this playing into the repetitive relational experience of Darcey being blamed for everything, which is interesting, but also probably related to this, just speculating, this trauma around him being a disappointment to other people. And so he's trying to blame her because really he's blaming himself deeply for every wrong he's ever done to everyone else. I don't know that. I would have to ask him, but it's a speculation.
It's really hard for me to listen to the Jesse thing all the time.
Okay.
And I kind of felt jealous because I wished that I could have loved you the way he did. Because your idea and notion of love is not me. You had it with him, and I love you in a different way. I love you like you're my sister.
Oh.
I ended up feeling like you
okay.
were my sister or a friend.
Oh, boy.
So it's an interesting conceptualization that he has, that he wishes they had a relationship like him and like Jesse. And let me listen to that back again.
It was really hard for me to listen to the Jesse thing all the time.
Okay.
And I kind of felt jealous because I wished that I could have loved you the way he did.
I wish I could have loved you the way he did.
Because your idea and notion of love is not me. You had it with him.
Oh, I see. So he maybe watched the TV show and feels like she, in terms of his evaluation, Tom's evaluation, that she really loved Jesse, but he never saw that she really loved him. That's interesting. Her and Jesse certainly had a lot of action, and her and Tom seemed to have a lot less of that. And that points, speculation, that points to more of that avoidance of when you are avoidant, you tend to distance, and you need, in order to, but you want to be close. But if you're distancing, you need someone to really pursue you hard so that you can still have some closeness. And maybe he saw her really chasing Jesse in a way because Jesse and her had just a different dynamic, whereas he didn't see her really chasing him the way that she chased Jesse. That's my best guess as to that one. And deep down, that's what Tom wanted. He really wanted that deep closeness with her. And when they had the long distance relationship, he wanted her to really to continue that chase, even though they were across an ocean. He wasn't getting that, and that's when he started to fall out of love, or that's when he started to get hurt, and that's when his feelings changed for her. I don't know. I like this hypothesis. It sort of fits a lot of things together. So let's see if we have more data on that.
And I love you in a different way. I love you like you're my sister.
Oh.
I ended up feeling like you
okay.
were my sister or a friend.
Oh, boy. Well, you should have told me that before we got in the sack.
I'm saying that now.
Oh, awkward.
I'm saying that now.
I totally feel like Tom is spinning this on me. He's deflecting, he's gaslighting the situation to make himself feel better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't accuse him of doing that because he woke up this morning thinking he wanted to be a jerk face, but I suspect that his traumas compel him to do it that way. And or the fact that he just lacks differentiation. When you lack differentiation, it's hard to do that the way I modeled how to break up with someone. It's hard to own your own feelings because you have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet in a very confident way. You know, to say something like, look, I don't know if it was me or you. It definitely could have been me, but my issues made it so that our relationship tended to feel bad when we were separated. I don't know if it has to do with my past or whatever, but when we were separated, it was really hard for me to cope with that distance, and I would get hurt sometimes. And I know you didn't mean to hurt me. Maybe that's my, every time that I say my experience, which is hard to do for undifferentiated people, it's also hard to just take responsibility for it and just be like, that could be all my fault. I don't know. That tends to go over better when you word things that way to people, really in all situations, than when you say things like, you had all of me and then you screwed it up. I mean, how is Darcey supposed to react to that? Yep, you're right. It's all my fault. Now, Darcey used that word gaslight, which I will, if our language is drifting in that direction and the word gaslight is going to be used in situations like this, I guess that's okay. And I'll have to adjust. But that isn't the strict definition of gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone sets out on purpose in a sadistic or psychopathic or instrumental way to make you feel crazy by, in the movie Gaslight, the guy actually would move furniture around in the house, and then she would say, "Oh, the piano is on the other side of the house, on the other side of the room," and he'd be like, "No, it's not. It's always been over there." And then the woman's like, "Huh?" And she started to believe that she was going crazy, and he was doing this because I think he was trying to get her money or something. And if he made her believe she was delusional and made everyone else believe she was delusional, then he could get her money. It's an old movie. Anyway, that's gaslighting. Having immaturity and lack of differentiation and having defenses and being afraid and withholding information because you're terrified is not gaslighting in my book. It might feel like gaslighting, but gaslighting. And when people use it, I think they're using it in this way. I think when people use gaslighting in this way, I think they actually do mean that person is purposely trying to drive me crazy by telling me my reality is wrong. Well, I'm here to tell you, when two people break up, particularly, or when they're just, even if two people in a romantic relationship are just fighting about something, both people have a completely different point of view. So I guess both people are trying to gaslight each other. I don't think that's a helpful way to look at it. People have different points of view because people are emotional thinkers. They think from their perspective, they're biased towards themselves, and they're defended, and they're very emotionally influenced. So the fact, my cat wants to chime in. So the fact that one person is going, that's not, like when he's saying, you never really cared about me. And she's like, yes, I always cared about you. Well, both are right. So who's gaslighting who? They just have a different point of view. So, and the fact that it's hard to convince them and you're like, how do you see the world that way? Doesn't mean that they woke up in the morning and said, ha ha ha, I know that the reality, but I'm going to say this other reality and I want to mess with their head. That's a pretty rare individual. Of course, that happens sometimes, but I don't know if that's a helpful way of looking at it.
I wanted to stay friends.
Yeah, I don't want to be friends. I'm sorry. I think we're going to walk away completely. Fresh start for myself, for my family, for my friends. And it's going to be that way, and it's going to stay that way.
Okay. So I remember watching this the first time and having no sort of understanding of where this was headed. Now that I've seen Tom's behavior and we've heard interviews with him and we've seen people talk about his personality, I bet you right there he was triggered. You can even kind of see it in his face. I'll rewind it and we'll see it again, where I think he genuinely is like, please don't reject me. I'm going to break up with you in a way where I'm going to try to explain myself, and I don't want you to hate me, because when people hate me, that means I'm a bad person. And then Darcey, understandably, says, no, I don't want to be friends. When this ends, it ends. And I don't want, it's a common thing. When you're the dumper, it's often palatable for you to be friends, or at least that's a gesture you're willing to give over. When you're the dumpy, it's usually like, no, I don't want to be associated with someone who makes me feel this way. Or every time I see you, I'm going to feel like crap. Now, plenty of people are friends after breaking up. So at least after a probationary period, so to speak. But anyway, she's like, no, I do not want to be friends. And I think for him in that moment, that's his worst nightmare, is that rejection. Now, but because of his avoidance, he doesn't let on, but he showed it a little bit. It's total speculation because he doesn't give off much. So I have to go off of very little data, but let's watch that again.
Be friends. I'm sorry. I think we're going to walk away completely.
Now, sometimes they edit these things in weird ways, and so that look might not have even been the look that was happening before. But anyway, let's continue watching.
Fresh start for myself, for my family, for my friends. And it's going to be that way, and it's going to stay that way. Move on with your life. I don't want anything to do with you.
Forget
I don't
this
want
ever
anything
happened.
to do with you.
Thank you.
You are nothing to me right now.
I'm glad.
So again, it makes total sense that Darcey is angry. That's a secondary emotion. It's common when you're being dumped to go there. I think it would be better for Darcey if she were to remain in the baseline, the fundamental feeling of hurt, and maybe she needs to walk out and say, I can't deal with you right now. I need to talk with my friends. Or say, you know what, you're really hurting my feelings. This really hurts. I wish you would have done A, B, and C. I just want to tell you that those kinds of things, it really hurts my feelings. Because one, I think that is self-compassion, where she can have the hurt and take care of herself and feel confident enough to sit there. And it might elicit a better response from Tom so that she can walk away from this interaction feeling like he did love her and it wasn't all a waste of time, and that she's not stupid for picking him, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, okay.
And try not to ruin the next one.
Yeah, I forgot about that line. That is awful. I mean, this is escalating quickly. What does that say about Tom, that he could say such a thing like that? Why would you say such a thing? Try to not screw it up again. Speculation, when she said, I don't want to be friends, that's when he was triggered and really hurt, and all that pain came up for him, because it seems like that's when things took a turn for him. And one of the next things he says is something so hostile, because I'm guessing he's really hurt on the inside.
Can I have the check, please? I'll pay for his coffee.
When you see people like Tom, he's a cool customer, a cool cucumber. He seems calm. I'm guessing if we hooked him up to some bodily measures, we would see cortisol through the roof, adrenaline, heart rate, sweatiness, because again, the avoidant person has learned to not signal any emotion, because when you signal emotion, no one cares. And so people like this tend to look extremely put together when their body is completely freaking out. Given what he said, given that he said such a hostile thing, I suspect that his body is going through some kind of traumatic reaction.
I don't know this Tom. I just feel like he never respected me as a friend or a partner or a lover. Like, you've been silent for weeks. You want to give it another go. You're with another woman. Like, come on, dude. Give me a break. I'm happy to move on. I got bigger and better coming.
Did you put weight on?
What was that?
I forgot about that one too. Did you put weight on? So what is happening? I don't think Darcey, I definitely know we haven't seen this side of Tom. Where is this coming from? Why would he make such a shift? Has he always had these thoughts in his mind and always wanted to be hostile, but has been suppressing it along with all of his other emotions? Raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, good. Wonderful. Enjoy your life.
I will, now you're not in it.
Good, same here. Good riddance, thank God. He's not a nice person.
Yeah, that's pretty awful. That's pretty awful. I mean, what? Why would you say something like that? in front of cameras? Did the producers pay you to be a villain? Like, what would possess you to say such a thing? I mean, it just embarrasses him to say such a stupid thing.
He's not perfect. That's not someone I want to be around. I don't deserve to be treated that way. And no man will ever take advantage of me again.
All right, well, that does it for another installment of me reacting to the show 90 Day Fiancé with Darcey. This is, a really tough episode to watch. It's really sad for me to see people suffer like this. And once again, Darcey is left believing that she can never trust anyone, that she will always fail at relationships, that she can't trust other people. Walls are going up. And I really hope that she can go to therapy so she can become aware of these kinds of things. Maybe she is in therapy. I don't know. They're not showing it. There's no evidence that she has done a lot of work on getting to know herself, on differentiating, and on learning her patterns and healing from the past. So it's heartbreaking to watch, and we will see what happens in the future in the next installment. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.